Congratulations. You are born at the worst possible intersection of power, faith, and timing. It's the 14th century, and the world is rotting. You don't know it yet, but history has already loaded the plague into memory. Fleas are hopping ships. Rats are nesting in grain holds. Death is stretching, warming up, about to sprint across continents. And one day, somehow, you end up pope. Not king, not general, pope. Which sounds impressive until you realize what people think that means. You are God's mouthpiece on earth, his representative, his customer support hotline. So when the Black Death arrives and starts killing everyone, guess who gets blamed? Chapter 1. God's manager during a system failure. People don't understand bacteria, or fleas, or germs hitching a ride on rats like little apocalyptic taxis. They understand one thing: punishment. And since you are the guy allegedly on speaking terms with God, the math is terrifyingly simple. If people are dying, God is angry. If God is angry, you failed. Villages empty overnight. Fields once bustling with farmers and children are silent. Doors swing on broken hinges. Bodies pile faster than graves can be dug. Priests collapse mid-oration. Entire families vanish between church bells, leaving only the echo of unanswered prayers. Every corpse is a question aimed directly at you, a silent, accusatory finger. Why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you warn us? Why are the prayers bouncing? You try to respond. You issue statements. You declare days of fasting. You order masses. You call for processions. You preach repentance. You even sprinkle holy water with more desperation than a drowning man flails in a river. The plague does not care. And still, people come to you, clutching rosaries and shaking hands, eyes wide with terror. They look at you like you are a lifeline, a direct line to God. But you have no solutions. Only empty words and ceremonial gestures that cannot hold back the tide of death washing across Europe. Chapter 2. When faith becomes a liability. The problem is that your power, your sacred influence, becomes a weapon against them. The more you encourage people to pray together, the faster they die. Churches, once havens of hope, turn into infection hubs. Worshippers kneel shoulder to shoulder, coughing into each other's sleeves, sweating into the pews, touching relics, kissing icons. Every act meant to honor God becomes a vector for the plague. You meant well. You really did. You wanted to guide them, console them, protect their souls. Instead, you accelerated the apocalypse. Doctors suggest quarantines, isolation, closing city gates. Advice that makes perfect sense in a world of science. But you cannot say it, because saying it would sound like you admit God isn't in full control. That would be blasphemy. That would undermine your authority, and worse, that would undermine faith itself. So you tell people to trust. They do, and they die anyway. You watch from your balcony, shaking hands with the few survivors still alive, knowing that every word of encouragement you give is simultaneously a death sentence for the next person who believes in it. Chapter 3. The math problem you can't solve. And then the numbers arrive. Horrifying, incomprehensible numbers. 1/3 of Europe disappears. Not soldiers, not sinners, not heretics. Everyone. Priests die mid-sermon. Monks collapse in monasteries, clutching prayer books that cannot protect them. Cardinals don't even make it to old age. Entire convents vanish, leaving empty walls and silent bells. People start whispering that the plague isn't selective, it isn't moral, it isn't divine. It's just pure chaos, and your office, your authority, cannot contain it. If God is punishing sin, he's doing a terrible job targeting it. People notice. They ask questions, dangerous questions. Questions like, why children? Why nuns? Why entire convents wiped clean while the wicked live? You have no theology for this scale of failure. Every answer you give sounds hollow. Every explanation bends under the weight of death outside your gates. Faith falters. And when faith falters, your voice falters. Even your advisors start to look at you differently. Eyes that once reflected devotion now flicker with doubt, fear, maybe even contempt. You start seeing it everywhere, in the empty streets, in the terrified eyes of the sick, in the silent resentment of the clergy who watch their friends die. And through it all, you wonder, if God isn't stopping this, what good is your position at all? Because being Pope during the Black Death isn't a blessing. It's being handed the keys to a kingdom that's already burning, with people begging you to fix what cannot be fixed. Chapter 4. Scapegoats, because someone has to pay. When answers don't exist, blame fills the vacuum. Before people turn on each other, they turn on symbols. Fear needs something smaller than God, something closer than fate. So it starts with what has always been suspicious. Black cats begin to disappear. Creatures long whispered to be unlucky, demonic, witches in fur. If death is stalking the streets, then surely its servants must be nearby. Cats are dragged from alleys, drowned, burned, beaten in public squares. No one knows about fleas, no one knows about bacteria. They only know that something evil is loose in the world, and evil must wear a shape. So they give it one. And in doing so, they quietly erase one of the few creatures that once kept the real carriers of death in check. But fear is never satisfied for long. Soon, animals aren't enough. Jews are accused of poisoning wells. Foreigners are accused of spreading disease. The poor are accused of being cursed. You could stop this. You could condemn it clearly. But your power depends on keeping order, and order now runs on fear. So you issue vague condemnations, carefully worded, toothless. Pogroms happen anyway. People aren't just dying anymore, they're being murdered in God's name while you watch. Chapter 5. You can't even be holy in peace. The Pope is supposed to be untouchable. You're not. Popes flee Rome. Yes, flee. Some hide in Avignon, hoping geography can outsmart bacteria. You isolate yourself, not because of wisdom, but because you're terrified. Servants die around you. Advisors vanish. Every handshake feels like roulette. You pray constantly. Nothing happens. At some point, even you wonder if anyone is listening. Chapter 6. When authority starts cracking. People stop trusting the church. Not loudly, not at first. They just stop coming. Why confess if death comes anyway? Why tithe if tomorrow is not guaranteed? Why listen to men who can't save themselves? Mystics rise. Flagellants march through cities whipping themselves, claiming pain will impress God more than prayer. They ignore you. That's new. Your word used to bend kings. Now it can't even stop street preachers. Chapter 7. You survive. Everyone else doesn't. Here's the cruelest part. You live. While millions die, millions of peasants, nobles, priests, children, farmers, soldiers, you outlast them. You survive long enough to see the aftermath, long enough to witness the world as it mutates around you. Cities hollowed out, streets silent except for the occasional scavenger or wandering animal. Farmland abandoned, markets empty. Labor shortages so severe that peasants, once docile, frightened, obedient, start demanding rights, questioning old hierarchies, refusing to work the fields without payment. The world doesn't go back to normal, not ever. It mutates. What you knew as social order, as divine structure, as unquestionable hierarchy, evaporates. Authority is now a fragile suggestion. Your church is no longer the unquestioned center of reality. Chapter 8. History will remember you anyway. Centuries later, people won't remember your encyclicals. They won't remember the masses you ordered, the prayers you delivered, or the sleepless nights you spent in panic and guilt. They won't know how you tried, how you failed, how you begged God for answers and got silence in return. They'll remember one thing. You were Pope when God went silent. Fair or not, that's the title stamped next to your name in history books. A mark of coincidence, misfortune, and cosmic cruelty. You weren't evil. You weren't stupid. You weren't cruel. You were just unlucky enough to wear the crown when the universe stopped explaining itself, when death became an unstoppable tidal wave, when faith turned into futility. Power didn't save you. Faith didn't save them. And that's why, if there is one thing the universe can agree on, it absolutely, catastrophically, soul-crushingly sucked to be born Pope during the Black Death.